In 1979, Gillian Armstrong became the first Australian woman in 50 years to direct a feature film with the critically acclaimed My Brilliant Career. After the film was selected for a competition at the Cannes Film Festival, she was invited to Hollywood to develop features but chose to stay in Australia until the film Misophle brought her back to the United States. She followed with the successful adaptation of Lucinda May Alcott's classic Little Women in 1995. Her new film, Oscar and Lucinda, opens on December 31st, and here it is. Gillian Armstrong, welcome to this broadcast.
Thank you very much.
I sat watching that, and here's what my thought is. You know, do you understand what it is that actors do and how tough it is? And I mean, you must. I mean, that's the nature of what being a director is about. But I look at them and I'm saying, wow, this is tough.
Well, I understand it, and at the same time, I couldn't do it.
Did you ever think about doing it?
Oh, I did. When I was little, and I had a great interest in theatre and literature, my mother spoke to my teacher, who said he thought that I had some talent in the arts. And I actually started speech and drama classes. And I can remember doing these pieces like Jane Eyre or Titania from Midsummer Night's Dream when I was about 11 or 12. And I can remember when I was standing up doing the little pieces, voice was going, "You're not very good. You know, your lips are too thin." I mean, I think I could always, I mean, obviously there was a director there all the time, and I knew I wasn't very good. So in the end, I really thought, I think I'd rather be behind the scenes because I loved it. I just wanted to be part of it, but I love watching actors work.
Do you know the difference, or what is the difference, I guess is the way I should ask this, between the good and the great?
Yes.
What is it?
I don't think you can. I don't think you can explain it technically because it's an organic thing. There are some people. I think for me, auditioning actors, it's happened to me twice, where a person has come into the room that I've never ever seen before. They've done a reading, and a chill has gone through my body. Their performance has been so extraordinary. Not just their performance, but everything about that person has. I mean, it's been almost an emotional experience. One of those people was young Miss Judy Davis, when she came to read for My Brilliant Career. And after she went out the door, the casting director and I, without even needing to say, we didn't say anything, we just ran into each other's arms and hugged. And the other time that happened to me recently was when Claire Danes read for Little Women, and it was exactly the same thing. And there was just, I thought, an incredible chill that this was somebody that was unique, that was special and had a great talent.
What kind of films do you like to direct?
What kind of films do I like to direct?
Right.
I like great stories, I suppose. I like stories that affect me, and I like also films, I suppose it's sort of like, it's the films I like to go to see as well. I like something that's teaching me something, saying something, disturbing me as well. And I suppose finally I feel that cinema is a visual art, and no matter what, I want to be carried away by the images as well as the story.
And where did this film come from for you?
Well, this film came from a wonderful book from Peter Carey's Booker Prize-winning novel, Oscar and Lucinda. But
for you, in terms of seeing it and wanting to do it, and what was it about it that...
Well, I think when I read Peter's story, which is such an odd, incredible story, a magical story with the two most fantastic characters, Oscar and Lucinda, I felt compelled. I felt I had to do it. And of course there's a central image as well, which I think is sort of any filmmaker's dream. That's there, this bizarre, surreal image of a glass church floating down a river.
What was it about the story, though, that...
I think that's an incredible story. It's not only a love story, but it's about faith and fate and chance. And it's also a story that's being told within a story, and I love the way that Peter Carey plays with you as an audience, that he takes you on a journey. And I really think it says a lot about not only who we are as human beings and our weaknesses and frailties, and about love, but also that terrible thing about life. Where do we go? What happens to it? Is it our own choices, or is it fate, or is it chance? And that's something that I think that we're all interested in and intrigued by, and this is definitely a story about fate.
Why just choose these actors for these parts?
Well, I think, you know, we found Ralph Fiennes when he was an up-and-coming young actor at the National Theatre Company, way before Schindler's List or Quiz Show. And it's funny now because I'm actually staying in the hotel where I finally met him in New York. He'd just arrived here to do a quiz show. And he was a sweet, shy young man who said, "I am Oscar." And it's now...
He said that to you?
He did, yes. He adored our script. And then he went and read the book and became a huge fan of the book. And it was interesting because there was a whole journey. He almost became too famous to be available. He wanted to do it for so many years. And then his career took off in such a way I had to finally wait for him for nearly...
To find a hole in his schedule.
Yeah, I had to wait nearly 18 months after Little Women before I made this film. But the qualities that Rafe had that I think were so rare and special, apart from, of course, from being a great talent and a fabulous, fabulous actor, was I had to find this person that could be both a nerd, who was odd and people laughed at him, and yet at the same time he is ultimately a romantic hero and has inner strength and goodness. And that was a delicate balance. I could either find your gorgeous romantic hero or I could find your nerd, but someone who could play both. That was very special.
And her?
And Kate,
yes.
Blanchett, is an up-and-coming young Australian actress nobody had really ever seen before. 1 year out of drama school, I hadn't seen her theatre work. I was away doing Little Women. And she came in and did one of those auditions that sent a chill through me.
Off,
yeah, she's very special.
All right, set this up. This is where he's explaining, where Oscar's explaining to Lucinda that gambling is something that God would understand because it requires a leap of faith.
Uh-huh.
What point in the film?
Well, the story's about these two people who have a secret, and their secret is that they're both gamblers. And at this point in the story, they've met, they're both on a voyage on a ship on the way to Australia. And he's an English minister, and she comes upon him mistakenly. It's so guilty that she was actually looking for some place to gamble that she asks him to come and hear her confession. So that's really, and in this scene, she starts to realise that this English minister who's come to hear her confession is actually a gambler.
Roll tape, here it is. We were just talking as we watched that. It is, because what we do here is nothing but faces. Your face, my face, you know, back and forth. Dialogue, unscripted. Here you scripted dialogue with great performances.
And two wonderful performances, and you really wanted to watch them all the whole way through.
Yeah, you want to see her reaction to him, not just her talking. So how do you decide? And you said you cut it 20 times.
We did. I mean, I worked with a wonderful editor, Nicholas Bowman. I've actually worked with him for 20 years. And so I let him have the first go. And then together we look at it. I mean, I think he's got great instincts, but we actually tried it. And of course, it's fantastic now. You're cutting on computers because it's so fast, and you can keep them all and play them back. So but we tried it about 20 ways of who should be on at which line, and should we be wide, or, you know, and it's interesting. Sometimes a dialogue scene with two people can be the hardest thing to cut because the nuances of performance, as you picked up on.
Yeah.
I mean, who do we want to see speak? Who do we want to see react? At which point, I think, and sometimes it's much harder to cut than, you know, those fancy action sequences where people like leap off a train and there's 10 explosions. And they're the ones that editors get awards for. But this is the real art of cutting, I think, performance.
I do too. I mean, only because of the reasons I explained, but because there was a moment in which I looked at that and I thought, for a moment, and I know nothing about, obviously, directing, why is he, director or editor, still on her? You know, because she was sitting there, you know, and you wait a beat, a beat, a beat, a beat. And obviously there's a reason. You did this 1,000 times, and you said there's something in her expression, her look, her breathing, her whatever, that is resonating with what he says, and you want to make sure you got that. Yes,
and also you're seeing a scene out of context of the whole movie, but in the story, part of the point is she's now seeing this man with a whole new way and new eyes. And she's the one that's thinking, who is this, you know?
When he says it's not a sin, it's almost, he's idealizing it. She knows he's one of ours.
Yes,
right?
That's right. Yeah. Yes, it's a meeting of like souls, for sure.
The joy of directing for you, other than just it's a nice place to be a part of this process, what is it about filmmaking that compels you to spend your time, energy, and intelligence?
It's actually a very hard job. And I think that part of the reason I'm compelled is that I feel I'm still learning with every film. I mean, and with every scene. I mean, even just talking about that little scene, I'm still learning. I still haven't got the absolute answers. It's not easy. It's still fascinating, trying to get it right, trying to work out how to tell the story and affect the audience at this point, that point, to take them on a journey. It's a fascinating art, and that's why I love it.
When you started, some people love to be in the editing room, love to be in the editing room. Other people love shooting. People like Hitchcock and others used to love blocking it out. That was what was thrilling for them. In other words, once the movie started shooting, they just had little interest in it.
I'm sort of interested in it all.
Oh, yeah, and you're there.
Yeah, and I'm there all the way, really right till the end, checking all those prints is what I've really done in the last month before this film's come out.
Checking all the...
Checking the colour of the prints, the colour tone of the skin, and how it's coming out photographically in the lab. That's where I was actually laughing at the lab technicians last month in Sydney as I was checking the key premiere prints for Oscar and Lucinda. I said, here's the glamour of directing. You know, I've got to sit through my own film over and over, 2 hours non-stop.
Yeah. Are you encouraged or discouraged by the way Hollywood is going?
I'm actually very encouraged. I mean, this film would not have been made in a Hollywood situation 6, 7 years ago when we first tried to make it. I think it's fantastic that some of the major studios are setting up little companies like Searchlight, who made this film. It's an odd story. They were very sympathetic and didn't want to sort of change it, make it more formula, give it sort of false endings or whatever.
They believed that this was a story that you could be told that an audience would like.
They believed that there would be people there who would love it, and they were happy to back it for a limited amount of money.
How much?
Well, this is really a lower budget than Little Women, and it's an epic film with special effects and shooting in 2 countries.
She's not going to tell me.
They tell me I'm not allowed to say the budget.
When you make films, you come away with what? Learning things about love, learning things about romance, learning things about relationships, learning things about living?
Well, I think that probably in a really boring, basic
or am
way.
I just sort of building this up to where it has nothing going on?
Well,
you make a film, you get paid, and you go to
No.
work
Well, I learn things about my craft.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I every time I look at anything I've ever done, I'm like, oh, God, why did I do that? And da-da-da. But then you get audience feedback to the film. And that's, I think, when you start to learn. I mean, people start telling you what they get from the story that you've been telling. And, like, there's some levels of some things that people have got from this film that were unexpected for me, and that was wonderful.
Novelists tell me, you know, that people, critics even, will come to them or write about their books and will in a sense, put things, which is perfectly legitimate, will see things they never saw. Of course, the novelist will always say, of course that's what I meant. But the idea is that, you know, if you create a work of art, if you create a piece of film or a book, that people who see it are going to resonate to it based on their own sort of set of experiences and see things that the next person doesn't see. Having said that, is it also true from country to country to country that the reaction to film is different?
Yes, it is. And this one especially, because it's a very Australian story. I mean, there are some parts of the story that only Australians will get. For instance, there's a whole joke. The whole story is a joke that Oscar, a man who's got this hidden secret of gambling, to get away from gambling, he leaves England to come to Australia. Well, every Australian knows that we have, like, the biggest gambling population in the world. So, I mean, that's like an in-joke in Australia. It's never talked about in the film, but every Australian would think that extremely amusing, that he thinks, I'll go and do, God's will. I'll go to Australia and get away from gambling because it's sort of part of our nature. Are
more and more women becoming directors? Or you see more people around now who are shooting, cinematographers and...
Oh, yes, many. And and especially in Australia, I think it's almost 50-50.
And will that mean that the movies we see are different because of that? Or will that happen when women are more in command in executive offices where they can green light movies?
Well, there are a lot of women in command in executive offices
Shirley
too.
Lansing, et cetera.
Yeah. I do think some of the first women in power actually probably even more conservative than a liberal man because they were being judged. Can a woman do it? I think that in the end that we have to say that women are a group of individuals with different taste styles, and I truly probably couldn't. I could walk into a film and not know whether a woman or a man directed it. I could say whether or not a person with certain sensitivities directed it, But in the end, I mean, I know that my film's very different to many of the other women who are out there directing, and they should be, because we're all different people, laugh at different things, like different things.
Gillian Armstrong, the film Oscar and Lucinda. We thank you for joining us, and we will see you tomorrow night. See you then.